Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Today, our portion from the Torah is called Vayishlach, an ascent. Parashat Vayishlach begins with Yaakov, Jacob. He was a timid man, and he had to finally face his brother Esau, who was a hunter. And he had reason to fear. Jacob had taken advantage of Esau. In a moment of weakness, he convinced Esau to sell him his birthright. But what really bothered Esau was that Jacob stole his father Isaac's, it says, innermost blessing, but the Hebrew is tavarechecha nafshecha, the blessing from his soul. And Esau cried out, first he took away my blessing, my birthright. Now he's taken away my blessing. Have you not reserved a blessing for me? You know, this word blessing was repeated 20 times in chapter 27. And I don't think we can truly understand the power of the blessing. But over the next 20 years, Jacob would learn what midah keneged midah means, measure for measure. Due to his own deceit, he would be taken advantage of at every turn by good old Uncle Lavan. But this would teach Jacob invaluable lessons for his future. The blessings that he got from his father, he would then give to his children. In a moment of desperation, Jacob cries out to God, deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau. How many of us have experienced moments of dread when we are faced with a situation that feels overwhelming? What do we do? How do we handle it? That's where the Torah comes in. That's the beauty of the Torah. It teaches us formulas and principles for dealing with these inevitable situations. Now, it doesn't teach us specifically what to do, because those events happened in a different era, in another part of the world, and to a very different culture. But it does teach us how to think and even how to strategize. Now, when Jacob had fled from Esau, God spoke to him. He said, I am Yud-He-Vav-He, the God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give the land on which you are lying to you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, because I will not leave you until I do what I have promised. That was in Genesis 28. So we might think that these words, powerful words from God's mouth, would be enough to instantly change Jacob into a strong, trusting, courageous believer. But we don't see that. And we don't see Jacob ever stopping to consider how much he had changed during those 20 years. He was no longer the timid and even spoiled man who had left home all those years ago. In Iran, he now had to work hard, full-time for Laban, who cheated him repeatedly. He worked without pay, as a shepherd enduring the blazing heat of the day and the freezing temperatures at night. And he had fathered 13 children. But instead, the Torah says, Jacob was greatly frightened. You know me and my formulas, I love them. And here we see a formula emerge as we watch all these things that Jacob did. Now, despite his intense fear, he assesses the situation. First, he spoke to his wives. He wanted to be sure that they were in agreement with him and that they would follow him wherever he went. He sent messengers ahead to help him determine what he was up against. I remember Rabbi would always say, forewarned is forearmed. And once he was armed with the information, he divided his people into two camps so that if Esau attacked the one, then the other might escape. So he hoped for the best, but he planned for the worst. And last but not least, Jacob spoke to his God, reminding him about his promise. He didn't boast about his strength. Instead, he said, and that's the song, Katonti Mikola Asadim, I am unworthy of all the mercy and the truth of what you have done for your servant. And then he prayed for deliverance from Esau, who was coming to him with 400 people. And on top of that, as a gesture of goodwill, to win his brother's heart, Jacob prepared gifts in abundance for Esau. And he devised a very strategic plan for his servants to deliver these gifts ahead of him. Joseph showed himself to be a true leader in spite of his anxiety, in spite of his fear. Then the Torah tells us Jacob was left alone. How many of us have experienced that? Even when we're in a crowd of people, we can feel alone. But out of nowhere, a man appears who fights with Jacob all night to the point that his hip was wrenched at his socket. Whoever and whatever this man was, it depicts the inner battle that Jacob was fighting. And it says he emerges victoriously. And the Hebrew was Ki sarita im Elohim ve'im anashim v'tuchal. Sarita means strive, for you strived with God and with men and have prevailed. It is then that Jacob the deceiver was officially renamed Israel. And one of the derivatives of the name Israel is Sarita from this verse, meaning strived. I think of how we, the Jewish people, have strived with our God over the millennia and continue to do so to this very day. We must learn from Jacob's story to be humble, not arrogant, and grateful for God's compassion and his mercy, his truth toward us. Vayishlach tells us that Esau and Jacob ended up hugging and kissing, and although they went their separate ways, they came together to bury their father. Jacob's descendants are the people of Israel, while Esau's descendants have become their enemies. How did this happen? Jacob and Esau were twins. They had the same parents, were raised in the same environment. But let's look at the choices they made. Esau chose wives from among the Canaanites, making his parents, Rebekah and Isaac, miserable. And Jacob obeyed his parents. Perhaps in his desire to please them, Esau then married the Ishmaelite, another tragedy for his parents. Women have tremendous influence over their children. And I'm sure these women heard stories about how Jacob robbed Esau of his double inheritance. I doubt that they cared about the blessing. Ishmael had been sent away from Isaac without a penny. Food for gossip from the mouth beginning with Hagar. Laban's sons spread the lie that Jacob stole their father's wealth. All these stories, passed down throughout the generations, have fanned the flames of hatred against Israel, who were their brothers, and later toward the Jewish people throughout the centuries. This is called anti-Semitism. And then we read in Vayishlach, Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz. She bore Amalek to Eliphaz. Amalek, who has a long history of hatred toward the Jews, beginning when they attacked the Israelites, the freed slaves, right after they left Egypt. They didn't attack the armed men. They aimed at the old, the weak, the sick, the children who were in the rear. That's cowardice. In this week's Haftarah, Obadiah addresses the descendants of Esau, who are described as having arrogant hearts. He said, "For the violence done to your brother Jacob, shame shall engulf you, and you shall be cut off forever." Remember Haman, who tried to have the Jews of Persia annihilated in one single day? He was a descendant of Amalek. Obadiah continues, "You should not have gazed with glee upon your brother that day, on the day of his calamity, nor rejoiced over the people of Judah on the day of their destruction." Didn't we see the people of Gaza cheer 2 years ago on October 7th when the hostages were murdered and raped and kidnapped? They don't realize that they are jeering against the God of Israel. And Obadiah continues, "The house of Jacob shall be fire, and the house of Joseph flame, while the house of Esau shall be straw." Sadly, hatred is the raison d'être for these people. And thanks to God, even that will come to an end one day. It's a two-sided coin. Deceit on one hand that breeds hatred, and unchecked hatred on the other that turns to sinat chinam, unbridled hatred. God told Jacob to return to Bethel, after which he ordered his household to rid themselves of their alien gods, cleanse themselves inside and out before going to the land. And here he was reminded that his name Jacob was from his past, and that now his name would be Israel. Both names would still be used. For example, we still say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We don't say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. I believe that as long as we are in these physical bodies, our past never truly leaves us, but serves as a reminder of who we used to be and how much we have grown. Jacob now sets up a matzeva, or a pillar of stone, as a physical sign affirming the promise of hope. And like every two-sided coin, Jacob had to erect another matzeva in honor of his beloved Israel, who died on the way, and we know why. He would remember how a rash vow had consequences. Rachel had not gotten rid of these idols that she stole from her father. You know, these stories hide nothing from us, and they don't whitewash our ancestors. So let us not whitewash our past, but let our past serve to humble us and remind us that the only holder of truth is the God who formed us. On our journey through life, the more we trust Him, the more we rejoice and can be grateful that we are safe and not alone. Our walk with God causes shut doors to open and paths of opportunity we never saw to appear. All of a sudden, I have watched God make a way for me when there didn't seem to be a way. It doesn't mean that we walk through life with blind faith. No, we all have our part to play. When we look at all that Jacob did to prepare for his reunion with his brother, it gives us ideas of what to do. You know, it's not enough to say, "Oh, I believe in God. He'll handle it." The Torah speaks about humility and obedience, and we can pretend to be humble and fake obedience, but God knows our hearts. And His motto is tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice we must pursue. If we do all these things, can we expect a totally tranquil life? I don't think so. But the beauty of the Torah is that it shows us that its heroes are human, not demigods. We will have rough patches when we pay the price for our pride and our disobedience, when we fall back into old patterns stemming from our upbringing. But instead of tearing ourselves down, we can stop to recognize that these are the times of the most significant growth and accept them with humility and gratitude. They mean that God is not finished. God is not finished with us. Jacob was brought back to Bethel, the house of God, the place where he first fled from Esau. How often does God bring us back to a place that needs a new perspective in order for us to grow? As a result of our childhood, many of us have felt unsafe, alone, and filled with anxiety and fear. But as we wrestle with ourselves, as Jacob wrestled with that man, God helps us to break those old paradigms, and they are life-changing. You and I have the benefit of these stories that our ancestors, about whom Moses wrote, did not have. Their lives exemplify for us the consequences of our actions, so that we can learn not to make the same mistake. That's how we learn wisdom, and that takes time. One important thing that we can glean from the Torah is that for every action, there is a reaction. And if we apply a bandage to a festering wound, it will never fix the reaction. It never works. We have to seek out the root cause. Today we are screaming out against anti-Semitism. But why did Cain kill Abel? Why did Esau want to kill Jacob? Why do the enemies of Israel and the Jews want to kill us? The root lies in the Torah. Until we deal with the root, the battle will continue. So let us choose our battles wisely. Let us learn from these stories, from and grab onto the wisdom that they teach us. We can choose trust over fear. It's not easy, and it takes time, but with God, all things are possible.